What if SharePoint could understand your content, not just search it, but answer questions about it? Today, I'm going to walk you through how I created a SharePoint agent in SharePoint, not with Copilot Studio, that tracks narrative canon in a fictitious media production called Project Mythica. This agent, called Lorekeeper, is powered by Microsoft 365 Copilot and serves as kind of a reference for building an intelligent agent in a document library in a SharePoint site. Let's get into the tech. This is part 2 of our Project Mythica storyline, where we built it to demonstrate exactly how Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, can help an organization manage a media production and really just demonstrate all of the amazing agentic capabilities that exist within Microsoft 365 Copilot. In the first episode, we looked at how Project Mythica was created really using Copilot chat to ideate, to create all the imagery you see here, and do all of the heavy lifting with creative and ideation and even some design work. So just to review, when we look through the Project Mythica SharePoint site that we created here, it's a lot of artifacts and SharePoint lists. And what we're going to focus on today is our character dev document library. And if we go here, we'll see that we've got a number of character Bibles. These are the exhaustive documents where everything about a character kind of lives, right? And we want to make sure when we add someone to a production that when someone is dropped into this world of Project Mythica, that they can easily get up to speed on who the protagonists are and the antagonists and their relationships and what planets they're from and what swords they carry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And doing that a manual way, AKA kind of reading everything, just takes a long time. And you might want to do that, but others might want to quickly dive in and get a good handle and just sort of understand more about the characters and then cross-reference characters and all these amazing things that writers and creatives do to build these fantastical worlds on screen or TV or in books. So what we've got here, again, if I open up one of these character Bibles, we see that Arya Del Mar, she's our lead protagonist. We see a visual description, her personal history, relationships. So that's our goal, is to just get a really thorough understanding by asking AI questions about these characters. Well, here we go. Let's create our SharePoint agent. Watch how hard this is. Wink. Got all of our documents here. We simply come to create an agent. Click. Our agent is ready. Wasn't that easy? And we're going to go ahead and open agent. Let's see if we can ask it some questions. All right, this looks pretty simple. Tell me about Lord Malakar. Where is he from? Okay. It says Lord Malakar is a primary antagonist characterized by his commanding presence and dark, elaborate robes. This is pretty exhaustive, right? And what I like about this is it tells us exactly where it got this information from. And as expected, it comes from his character Bible. Now we can get even more specific and say, compare and contrast the motivations of Lord Malakar and Darius, who is one of our protagonists. And let's see what this does. It's a slightly more complicated question, asking it to cross-reference some information. Okay, Lord Malakar and Darius are two characters with deeply contrasting motivations. So this is now getting to the kind of depth that we need to really understand our characters. Imagine a production with dozens of characters, like there often are in these universes that are created. This is great. While both characters are driven by past traumas, their motivations diverge significantly. So what we've done is, in about 3 seconds, I clicked create an agent. We've created for ourselves an expert in all things character for Project Mythica. Now that we've created our agent, let's customize it. Let's give it a special tone, a voice, maybe like a wizard from a mythical land. Let's give it some custom instructions so it knows how to format our responses. Let's give it some starter prompts so when people open this agent up, they know kind of the capabilities that are in it. So to edit the agent, what I'm going to do is I'm going to locate this .agent file that gets created when I create a SharePoint agent. And I'm simply going to come over here and I'm going to click Edit. And I'm going to start to give it some characteristics here. I'm going to call it Lore Keeper. I'm going to change the icon. So when everyone sees this particular agent, they know exactly what it does. And I'm going to give it a description. And then we'll go to sources. And we see that the sources are already pre-configured, right? Because we created this agent in a specific document library. So it knows that it's only looking at this specific document library. I can add additional files, I can add additional folders or SharePoint sites, but I don't want to do that. This is really just focused on these character Bibles that we're asking it to focus on. Now, if I go to behavior, this is where things get even more fun. So I've got a welcome message. That one's really boring. So I'm going to say, welcome to Lore Keeper, start with a question about a Project Mythica character. And the next part, this is where we can really customize the agent and tell it how we want it to respond. So in this case, what we're doing is we want it to reply in the voice of a mystical but professional wizard from another realm. Now that's on brand for what we're building here with Project Mythica, right? A wizard would know everything, so our agent now knows everything and is a wizard. Wherever possible, format your responses using Markdown. Now this is important because if we don't specify this, it's just going to give us plain text, right? So Markdown allows us to instruct the agent to go ahead and give us well-formatted paragraphs with headings and maybe even sprinkle in some emojis, but really what I like is just it's really well formatted and spaced, and it has nice headings, and it's just easier to read than the default type of responses. And finally, to conclude your response, ask 3 relevant questions. I like this because when I'm asking my own question, the agent follows up with 3 questions that I might not have thought about that just keeps that train of thought going and usually gives me a little bit more insight or makes me think about something that is relevant to the question that I just asked. Now finally, you see down here that we can add advanced customization in Copilot Studio. And this is kind of a trap that goes nowhere. So it takes us to this placeholder that says, hey, eventually you're going to be able to take this cool SharePoint agent and customize it in Copilot Studio and add all this additional capabilities. So if this ever takes off, you can really make it this enterprise ready agent. And over here, we see that there's a little test surface. Oh, you know what we forgot to do? We forgot the conversation starters. So let's add those. So based on Darius's character Bible, suggest a sidekick. Create a table comparing Lord Malachar with our protagonist, leading space, and then create a simple list of protagonists. And again, these starter prompts are really just designed to give someone an idea of what our agent should do or can do, right? And now the test surface over here has those starter prompts. So let's see, let's suggest a sidekick for Darius. And so when you're building these agents, just think about what are some of the kind of core things that you want the agent to do, and use those for your starter prompts. Short, simple, easy prompts. Now let's review what it brought back. Now, the first thing I see that is it's well formatted using Markdown, right? So I see that there are headings, see there are well-defined paragraphs, not like the default response, which is just basically a wall of text. The other thing I see is that we've got these 3 follow-up questions that I love. How do you envision the dynamic? What specific skills or abilities should Celine possess? So it suggested that Celine Cathar, one of our characters, is maybe Darius's sidekick. So good guys team up. That's great. I've done this prompt other times where it just made up a whole new character, which is pretty cool. All right, and finally, we see again that the references point exactly where we think they would to the character dev document library. So this is awesome. We'll hit save. And then after we hit save, we're taken back to our document library where we see this nice lore keeper agent. All right, and next steps, how do we access the agent? How do we share it? How do we tell people about it? Well, one easy way to access it is right up here in this Copilot icon here in the top of the SharePoint site, where it defaults to Project Mythica, kind of the default site agent that can reason over everything in the site. But we want to choose Lorekeeper, one we just built. And you'll notice that the contrast here is pretty bad. That's because of the dark theme I'm using with this site. It works for everything, but for some reason, agents, it doesn't really like this dark theme. So maybe something to think about in the future. But for now, we see that this agent is now embedded within the site, and I can start to advertise that with people. But other things we can do with this agent is we can go ahead and open it up directly, and then I can share this out. I can say, hey everybody, say Corey and Amber, and this should look pretty familiar. This is just the default SharePoint file sharing, resource sharing dialogue here. So we can share that out and send it. And for people that can access this document library and this site, this will work immediately, just like it worked for us. So an easy way to distribute this and share it and kind of get people excited about it. It is just here in the SharePoint site, and it is bound by SharePoint site permissions, and your SharePoint site administrator can also determine what agents are approved, etc. In a future video, we'll talk about governance, security, and compliance for SharePoint agents. Well, today we looked at how easy it was to create a SharePoint agent in about 3 seconds, configure it, share it, and we're done. So in our next episode in the Project Mythica series, we're going to create a declarative agent and look at using Agent Builder to not only build the agent similar to what we did today, but give it even more superpowers using Microsoft Graph connectors, using some additional capabilities to publish it out to things like Teams and even Copilot chat. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps a lot. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.